Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi, and welcome back to our final episode in our ISO 22301 Steps to Success series with our business continuity expert, Rachel Churchman. Just to recap, we've covered the create and share steps from our create, share and engage steps to implementing a business continuity management system. So in the final stage, we're going to be looking at the engagement piece. Okay, so again, just to go back on what we've covered so far, episode 1, which was the creation part, Rachel talked us through identifying the gaps and where we need to go as far as the action plan is concerned. Also covering 2 of the key areas of determining what your requirements are from a business continuity perspective, which is the business impact analysis and the risk assessment, which Rachel described as the heartbeat of the business continuity management system, because that's where all of the kind of the response plans and how you kind of deal with different scenarios, that it all comes from that detailed BIA and risk assessment. And she also covered the key documents that are required for a business continuity management system. In episode 2, she covered the sharing of that system. That was when she went into communications planning and the testing and exercising of the BCP. So it's not just sitting on a shelf gathering dust or hidden away in a server. It's actually been launched. It's out there in the workplace. All employees know that you've got a business continuity system in place to demonstrate that you are a resilient company and that you can deal with any type of scenario in theory. I know that obviously you can't necessarily deal with every single type of scenario, but you're well positioned to be able to deal with any external issues that are thrown at you that could potentially interrupt your business. So this final episode is going to be covering the engagement piece. So this is the kind of final stage before you have an assessment, your stage 1 and stage 2 assessment. Now Rachel won't be going into detail on that assessment. We have actually recorded an episode, which is number 3. So if you go back into our archives, you'll see number 3 is an episode on what to expect in your first ISO assessment. Okay, so I definitely recommend having a look at that. So that's episode 3, because it's very similar regardless of what standard it is. Okay, it's the same sort of process, and that helps you to prepare for that assessment stage. So in this episode, Rachel's going to be talking through the engagement piece, which is typically within our projects, it's going through internal audits and verifying that the system is effective, that it is in place and everybody's engaged with it, and also the management review. So without further ado, welcome back, Rachel.
Hi Mel, thank you for having me back for the final podcast on Steps to Success for Business Continuity. As you said, we're going to be looking at the engagement piece, which is kind of the final part of the journey towards certification for ISO 22301. So it is very important that we are able to review and evaluate the effectiveness of our BCMS and making sure that it is going to deliver that resilience that we require as a business. And this can very much be achieved through the internal audit process for the management system. So if you remember back in episode 1 of the podcast series, we talked about having an internal audit plan and schedule in place, both for internal audits and testing and exercising. So this is where we pick up on that plan and we actually walk through those internal audits. Now, just to make all our listeners aware, business continuity is one of those standards where internal audit is going to focus far more on awareness for the staff and interested parties. We're creating a system, as you said, that we hope we're never going to have to invoke, and it's very much theoretical on, the what ifs and what would we do's. So the effectiveness of the management system does rely on the staff and the workforce and the interested parties understanding their roles and responsibilities and the procedures that we want them to follow should the worst happens. So there is therefore going to be a far more in-depth understanding required through that internal audit process. So yes, we will internal audit the key documents and records, the business impact analysis, the risk assessments, the high-level strategies and the response plans. They will of course form part of the internal auditing to make sure we're covering all the requirements. But what is very much different in an internal and an external audit for business continuity is that staff awareness interviews are going to be far more than just, do you know if we've got the management system in place? Do you know where the policy is? Do you know where to access it? It's going to be far more in depth than that. So depending on the role that someone plays within your business continuity management system, their interview from an internal or external audit point of view is going to be far more in depth. So let's take an example. If we've got somebody who's in top management, that leadership interview for internal audit is going to go beyond just the context, the internal external issues of the management system. There are also going to be questions asked, and we're going to be looking to verify understanding of other responsibilities within the business continuity management system. So for instance, communications. Do they know who they are supposed to be communicating to? Do we know what messages they're looking to communicate to the business? Who do they liaise with within the business to make sure those communications are effective? Another example could be interviewing somebody who has a role within a response plan. So part of the internal audit is going to verify awareness that they understand the role they play, and we'll almost ask them to sort of walk through their role within a response plan so that we are gaining that sort of reassurance that they know what they're supposed to be doing, who they're supposed to be talking to, what resources they need, have they actually got access to those resources. So that will very much be tested and put to the test through internal audit. But this gives us that value and reassurance that people do actually know what it's all about, and they do actually understand how we need them to react should a BCP response be invoked. And as with any standard, as a part of the internal audit process, we will undoubtedly uncover issues and findings, whether that's a non-conformity or whether that's an opportunity for improvement. So we need to also verify within the engage element of the journey that there is an effective corrective action process in place and that our findings are going through that process. Part of the internal auditing is also going to be looking at some of perhaps the disaster recovery elements of a management system. I know Mel spoke about this in episode 2 of this series. So we've been focusing very much on business continuity for people and processes and activities. But in this day and age, we can't forget the importance that IT plays within a business continuity response. So there is a slight overlap with business continuity for instance, ISO 27001 for information security. There is a requirement for testing business continuity and security in the event of an incident. So we will also very much ensure that's covered during the internal audit process as well. So once we've gone through our plan and we've conducted the internal audits, and we've made sure that their corrective action process is being effectively followed and carried through to include a review of effectiveness of actions taken, the last jigsaw piece before we're ready for our certification is to undertake the holistic review of the BCMS. And this is achieved through conducting a management review. So a management review is a process that reviews all of the key inputs and requirements and interactions into the management system. And this includes that supply chain interaction as well as applicable. And it will analyse the effectiveness of the management system. How is it working for us? What have we understood through our training and our awareness, our communications with our workforce and our supply chain? What have we learned through testing and exercising and internal audit and those awareness interviews? And is there any potential need for change? Have we missed anything? Is there any lessons learned that we need to make decisions on and perhaps amend within our management system and re-communicate to the business? As with any management system, we'll have always set ourselves some objectives for continual improvement. So it's going to review progress and applicability of those objectives at this point in time. What's the progress made? Do we need to add any or change any? We'll also be looking at other key inputs such as the results of the audits and supplier performance as well. So it's very, very similar to other management system standards. So if an organisation already has a management system in place, we would be looking to integrate the management review and have just the one process that reviews all of the requirements of the different standards. And so the outputs of the management review, we would always recommend that key achievements and key messages coming out of management review are also communicated within the business. So it's good to have transparency of that review in the business so that everybody who's playing a part in the business continuity management system understands what's going well, where things might need to change, and how we're doing in terms of progress against our objectives. And again, we are talking about engagement here. It's a very important step to keep the workforce engaged so that they understand that business continuity is a living and breathing process within the business. It's not just something we've done as a one-time event just to achieve certification, that it is in fact something that now is part and parcel of how we operate our business. So it's important to keep that transparency and that communication going beyond management review and certification.
Great, thanks Rach for giving us an insight into what's involved with that final stage on engagement, covering internal audits and the fact that it's not just a tick box exercise, it is really about making sure that everybody's engaged with the business continuity management system, they know what to do, where to go and who they need to contact if they have any queries at all regarding business continuity response plans as well for their business. And also I think, finally on the management review, that's just the final kind of preparation that's needed for that assessment at the end. So just to remind you that the podcast for that is available on the Blackmores website. So that's if you go to the ISO show section on the blackmoresuk.com website, there is a section that says new to ISO standards, and that particular episode on what to expect during a stage 1, stage 2 assessment is there. So I think, over the last couple of episodes, we've covered in detail how to create, share and engage in relation to business continuity management system and how to achieve certification. I hope that's been helpful. And also not forgetting the previous episode that we recorded on the benefits of ISO 22301. And clearly from the information that Rachel's provided with us over the last couple of episodes, she's clearly helped us to understand how we can gain some of those benefits. So just to recap on some of those benefits, we mentioned about identifying and understanding the most valuable and critical business processes, and also what the impact of that disruption is on the business, and how to respond to certain incidents in different scenarios, because we'll have already gone through and identified them and exercised and tested those different sorts of situations. We also mentioned about the financial benefits and reputational benefits as well in that previous episode. So looking at potential reduction in insurance costs, improving your reputation and minimising reputational damage when there is a serious incident that occurs. And finally, it mentioned as well in the previous episode about encouraging clear communication with all employees and what they need to do to recover from an incident, and making sure that compliance is in place to meet all of your client requirements and other key stakeholder requirements. So thanks very much for that, Rachel. That's been really valuable, to go through how to implement ISO 22301 in those 3 simple steps. We have got other episodes coming up in this resilience series that we're covering on business continuity and how to best recover and respond to stressful situations that businesses face. And we have got an interview coming up with a company that's actually invoked their business continuity plans as a result of the pandemic. And we've also got an episode coming up with Rachel where she'll take us through all the changes to the latest version of ISO 22301, which is ISO 22301 2019. Thanks very much once again, Rachel.
Thanks for having me, Mel. Hopefully there's a few tips in the series that's going to help others to enhance their business continuity plans. And I'd always recommend going for 22301. If you've put all the hard work into developing an effective management system for business continuity, why wouldn't you go for certification?
Great, thanks very much, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.